Please remember that I, Warren Rogers, do not have the authority to speak as a representative of God or of any church. I am a candidate for a public office, and what I say is my opinion. I will read to you Doctrine and Covenants 101:80. I, the Lord, established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom I raised up unto this very purpose, and redeemed the land by the shedding of blood. The Holy Ghost has confirmed to me that the Lord raised up wise men to establish the U.S. Constitution. Then, over a century later, the Lord also blessed us with the Utah State Constitution. Furthermore, many of you agree. Therefore, I ask you, when we face problems such as riots and destruction of monuments, should we look to these constitutions to guide our response, or should we ignore these inspired documents? Article 15 was included in our Utah State Constitution when our state constitution was first written in 1895, and has never been amended since then. Please read Section 2.
Utah State Constitution, Article 15, Militia. Section 2, Organization and Equipment. The legislature shall provide by law for the organization, equipment, and discipline of the militia, which shall conform as nearly as practicable to the regulations for the government of the armies of the United States.
If we are going to match the organization, equipment, and discipline of the U.S. Army as closely as we practically can, then it seems that the militia is intended to be a fighting force. However, because the militia has many, many members, as we shall see, it must be comparable to Army reserves, rather than the full-time active duty Army. If it were a full-time fighting force, it would leave the state's civilian economy desperately short of workers. Will you please read Section 1 now?
Section 1. How constituted? The militia shall consist of all able-bodied male inhabitants of the state, between the ages of 18 and 45 years, except such as are exempted by law.
Section 1 establishes the militia by setting the standard of who was thought able to bear arms. If we take our state constitution seriously, then all inhabitants of the state who meet the following criteria are deemed able to engage in combat to defend our state. Utah militia members are able-bodied, male, and 18 to 45 years old. Let's assume, for easy calculation, that 1 out of every 5 inhabitants meets the criteria. According to Wikipedia, in 2019, the Utah population was about 3.2 million. That would give us about 640,000 Utah militiamen. Imagine how quickly riots would cease in our state if rioters were confronted with thousands of armed, organized, and disciplined men, or even hundreds of thousands of such men.
Surely some Utahns will be reluctant to embrace the constitutional militia system because they do not want to serve in the militia.
If we examine the provisions in the U.S. Constitution that mention the militia, we will see that constitutional militia service is less bothersome than service in the National Guard. In the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 lists powers of Congress. We will read a small part of the list.
Congress shall have power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions.
We see here that Congress can make a provision for calling the militia into federal service only for 3 specific purposes: enforcing federal law, suppressing insurrection, which is violent resistance to the enforcement of federal law, and repelling invasion. So the federal government cannot send the militia to invade a foreign land or intervene in the affairs of other nations. For example, unlike the National Guard, the federal government cannot send the militia to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Congress shall have power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress.
Speaking of the militia, the U.S. Constitution above refers to such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. Because the militia has so many men, most likely any federal service that does occur would only involve part of the militia. Note that the U.S. Constitution reserves to individual states the appointment of militia officers and the authority to train a state's militia, so the federal government cannot send Utah militiamen to another state such as New York for training.
How can we restore the constitutional militia system, which Utah and other states have neglected for over a century now?
We do not need help or permission from the federal government. The militia is already expressly provided for in the U.S. Constitution. We do not need to amend our state constitution. The provisions we need have been in the Utah State Constitution for as long as there has been a Utah Constitution. We do need to take federal and state constitutional provisions seriously. Governor Herbert should call a special session of the legislature that will meet as soon as possible to consider legislation that addresses the organization, equipment, and discipline of our state militia according to the Utah State Constitution, Article 15, and addresses the training of our state militiamen and the appointment of militia officers according to the U.S. Constitution. Our first goal is to get the militia ready to confront rioters. Because there were riots in 2016 when he was first elected, I expect that, at least if the president is re-elected, that there will be more riots after the November 2020 elections. This year, 2020, is an election year, and I, Warren Rogers, am a candidate of the Independent American Party for Utah State Senate, District 24. Please remember that most offices are low profile compared to President of the United States, or even Governor of our state. For lower profile offices, the most important reason why your fellow citizens, your peers, vote for the wrong candidate, or not vote at all, is that they do not know who the candidates are and what the candidates stand for. Your peers, your fellow citizens, need your help to learn what the media will not tell them. Will you please like, share, and subscribe? I will put a link in the description below this video. Please send it to each person you know and recommend that he watch this video.